Perhaps at some point, you've asked yourself if money is truly a divine blessing or a disguised trap. If you've ever reflected on the impact of your possessions on your faith, or if you're concerned about balancing prosperity and spirituality, you're in the right place. To facilitate understanding, we will divide the discussion into 4 parts, where we'll explore from a broader view of the influence of wealth on spiritual life to a deeper reflection. If this topic interests you, welcome. Grab your water or coffee, make yourself comfortable, and subscribe to the channel to follow more videos like this every day. Our starting point to understand if money is a divine blessing or a true spiritual trap is the following question: why does wealth fascinate us so much? Wealth, in many aspects, is seen as a sign of divine blessing and favor. However, when we look at the scriptures, particularly Luke 12, we see that Jesus offers a very countercultural view on the accumulation of material goods. He warns that wealth can become an obsession, pulling people away from true spiritual values. Historically, wealth has been associated with power, control, and influence. People tend to believe that with more money, they have more freedom and security. However, what is often overlooked is how much this pursuit of wealth can consume our lives, diverting us from spiritual practices and values. The scriptures show us that a life centered on the pursuit of material goods can distance us from God. Jesus addresses this issue seriously in Luke 12, narrating the parable of the rich fool, who, after accumulating great wealth, plans to rest and enjoy his possessions. However, Jesus warns, "This night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided?" This question is not just about mortality, but a reflection on where we place our trust and the purpose of our lives. Through his words, Jesus challenges us to think about our priorities. He invites us to reflect on whether we are accumulating treasures on earth, where everything is perishable, or investing in spiritual riches, which have eternal value. This is where the fascination with wealth becomes a true spiritual trap, when it makes us forget what truly matters. Moreover, it's important to note that wealth itself is not intrinsically evil. The problem arises when it becomes the center of our lives, when we start trusting money more than God. The Bible is clear in teaching that the love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself. This is a crucial distinction that many fail to grasp. Therefore, the essential question is how we view and use wealth. It can be a blessing when used for good, to help others, and to promote the principles of the kingdom of God. On the other hand, it can become a curse when it leads us to arrogance, selfishness, and distance from God. Thus, it is vital to maintain a balanced view aligned with Jesus' teachings, avoiding the idolatry of money. And why did Jesus give so many warnings about the danger of wealth? The answer becomes clear when we examine the context and content of Luke 12. This is a chapter rich in teachings on how we should view our possessions and, more importantly, where our hearts should be. In Luke 12, Jesus speaks directly against the accumulation of earthly wealth and emphasizes the importance of being rich toward God. He warns that a person's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions, but in their relationship with God. This is a counterintuitive statement in a society that often values material success as an indicator of personal and spiritual worth. One of the most significant aspects of Jesus' warnings is the constant reminder of life's temporary and uncertain nature. He teaches us not to worry about tomorrow and to trust God to provide for our needs. This trust, however, is not a license for laziness or irresponsibility, but a call to reevaluate what truly matters. Jesus uses a series of parables to illustrate his points, including the parable of the unfaithful steward and the watchful servant. In each of them, the focus is on preparation for what is to come, not on accumulating wealth for this world, but on being ready for the kingdom of God. He warns against the deception of believing we have more time or that the accumulation of goods can guarantee our eternal security. These warnings are still relevant today. In a world that values wealth and material acquisition, Jesus' words invite us to adopt a different perspective, to focus on treasures that cannot be destroyed or stolen. He calls us to place our trust in God, who knows our needs and promises to take care of us. Another crucial point is the idea of spiritual vigilance. Jesus warns us to always be prepared, for the Son of Man will come at an hour we do not expect. This is a powerful metaphor for spiritual life, reminding us to always be ready, keeping our hearts and minds focused on God and not on our possessions. In summary, Jesus' warnings in Luke 12 are a call to action to reevaluate where we place our trust and what we are seeking in our lives. They challenge us not to be like the rich fool who accumulated treasures for himself, but was not rich toward God. How can greed corrode the soul and lead us astray from the spiritual path? In Luke 12, Jesus shares several stories and parables that reveal the dangers of greed, offering lessons that are as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago. One of these stories is about the rich fool, a man who, instead of sharing his abundance, decides to build bigger barns to store his goods. Jesus uses this parable to show that greed not only distances us from God, but also leaves us vulnerable to life's unpredictability. The man was rich in possessions but poor in spiritual wisdom, and his life was required before he could enjoy his goods. Greed is portrayed here as a form of spiritual blindness. It makes us focus on the material instead of the eternal, causing us to forget that our lives are not determined by what we own. The teaching is clear. The incessant pursuit of more wealth can lead us to ruin, both in this life and the next. Jesus warns that it is better to be rich toward God than rich in material goods. Another example comes from the story of the unfaithful servant, who, upon seeing that his master delayed in returning, began to abuse his authority, eating, drinking, and indulging in excess. When the master returns unexpectedly, the servant is caught off guard and punished. This parable illustrates the danger of complacency and the false security that often accompanies wealth. The narrative of Luke 12 also emphasizes the importance of generosity. Jesus encourages us to give to the poor and to accumulate treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys. Here, he subverts the common logic of accumulation and possession, promoting a vision of life that values generosity and compassion above the accumulation of wealth. Jesus also warns us against anxiety about the future, teaching that those who seek first the kingdom of God will have their needs met. This is a promise that challenges the worldly logic of financial security through the accumulation of wealth rather than trust in God's provision. Moreover, the stories in Luke 12 teach us the value of a life focused on spirituality rather than materialism. Jesus calls his followers to be different, to not conform to the standards of this world, but to be transformed by the renewal of their minds. These lessons remind us that greed is a trap that can imprison us in an endless cycle of desire and dissatisfaction. Jesus offers us a way out, a life centered on God, marked by generosity and trust in his provision. How can we transform our understanding of wealth to reflect eternal values? In Luke 12, Jesus teaches us that true prosperity is not measured by what we possess, but by what we give and the love we demonstrate. Jesus introduces a new perspective on prosperity, one that is not based on material accumulation, but on generosity, justice, and love for others. He challenges us to rethink our relationship with money and to focus on accumulating treasures in heaven where nothing can corrupt or steal. This is a radical perspective that calls us to live contrary to the materialistic values of the world. True wealth, according to Jesus, lies in cultivating a generous heart and seeking the kingdom of God above all else. He reminds us that where our treasure is, there our heart will be also. Thus, if we place our treasure in eternal things, like faith, hope, and love, our hearts will also be aligned with those things. To cultivate eternal riches, a commitment to justice and equity is required. Jesus invites us to be agents of transformation in our communities, using our resources to help the needy and promote peace and justice. This is a call for all of us, regardless of our financial situation, for we all have something to offer. Another aspect of this new perspective is voluntary simplicity. Jesus teaches us to live with less and to seek simplicity as a way to focus on what truly matters. This doesn't mean giving up all comfort or pleasure, but rather prioritizing what has eternal value and not being enslaved by the constant desire for more. Additionally, Luke 12 calls us to live a life of faith and trust in God. Jesus encourages us not to worry about tomorrow, but to trust that God will provide for our needs. This is an act of faith that defies worldly logic, but is rewarded with a peace that surpasses all understanding. Finally, this new vision of prosperity is a call to live according to the values of the kingdom of God, where love, justice, and mercy are more valuable than gold or silver. It is a call to be a light in a world often obsessed with wealth and power. Throughout this video, we explored how wealth can influence spiritual life and Jesus' warnings in Luke 12. We saw that money, while useful, can become a trap if we're not careful. The key is to maintain a balanced perspective, using our possessions for good and focusing on accumulating riches that have eternal value. May we all reflect on where we are placing our treasure and, consequently, our hearts. True prosperity is not measured by what we have, but by who we are and the love we show. May our lives be a reflection of this truth. If this content touched you positively, leaving a like is the best way to express your gratitude and encourage us to produce more content like this. I also invite you to share the greatest lesson you learned from this video. Leave a comment with your reflection or something that touched you in a special way. I would feel very honored and happy to know how this message impacted your life. See you in the next video.